Good morning. Welcome to the Early Bird. First time hosting this one in a while. I'm Dave Loughran. With me, Adam Scherer, filling in for Dan Strafford here on Wednesday evening for a Thursday morning slate. We got 4 games to get into. Adam, how'd your Wednesday night go, man?
Not too bad. Wizards game's going on, so always nice when they play late. Gives me something to watch.
This is true. So we got 4 games. You and I broke down yesterday's slate. I was on the strategy show in the morning with Sal, and then the deeper dive with you at night. That's one of the wilder slates we've seen from an injury standpoint. It's a little nice to have somewhat of a respite here. Only 4 games to get to, the issue though is when you take a look at some of these, the amount of questionable and injured guys right now for a 4-gamer is way bigger than you would initially suspect.
Yeah, I mean, you have Golden State playing, you have Philadelphia playing, so that's 2 of them right there. You have Charlotte doing whatever the hell they're doing with their front court
Toronto
on a
too.
night-to-night basis. Yeah, Toronto too.
Yeah, Gasol, Van Vliet, Ibaka, they're all questionable. So we'll get into it. I think we'll go game by game. It'll make it easier. We only have 4 to get to. Before we do, though, shout out to our sponsor, superdraft.io, not .com, superdraft.io, or download it in the App Store. Get your $20 in free super cash by signing up and using the promo code AWESEMO. It's AWESEMO. When you sign up and deposit $100 or more, you'll immediately get $20 in free super cash to be used on the site to play and win real money. There's no salaries there. It's different. They didn't reinvent the wheel. They just made it work a little bit better. Multiplier mode. The best players, 1x multiplier. They get exactly what they score. But someone like, say, maybe who had a big game yesterday, Adam, off the top of your head? Larry Nance?
Yeah. That's
Larry Nance would be like a 1.55 or 1.6, something crazy like that. So if Larry Nance gives you 50 fantasy points, there you have it, 1.5 to 75 fantasy points. So you can run it out there and play Luka and Giannis and Antetokounmpo in the same lineup. But if they both score 55 or even 60, sometimes that's not going to be enough. That's what makes the multiplier mode so interesting and the strategy so different about everything, and a whole lot of fun to play. So check it out, superdraft.io, or in the App Store. You can download it there. Use that sign-up code AWESEMO. Make sure you do that upon signing up. You deposit $100 or more, you get that $20 in free super cash. All right, you ready to get into this?
Yep.
All right, so 4 games. We'll start with Denver and Charlotte. First of all, how about Denver losing at home to the Warriors? The Warriors have been worse at home, it seems, at least from a blowout perspective. And I get it. Sure, Denver's second in the West, but that's not a game you can lose. And how do you drop that game? What did you say? It was just remarkable that they lost that game.
Yeah, I can't remember. No, so Denver, I think, was on the other side because I remember there was another game this year where it was like a road game and whatever team won had no business winning. But I think it was Denver, like at Utah, missing, I don't know, maybe Jokic, Murray,
It
Millsap,
was because
Harris. Yeah.
I bet them plus 1,300 with 5 minutes to go. And that was the night, though. That was the night. And I won that. That was the night that after the trade deadline.
Right, yeah, because they had literally like 7 or 8 players.
Yeah, that was the day, Beasley was gone. I think Barton was injured or someone was out. And I think they only had, 7 players, and they ended up pulling through and winning that game. Another loss for the Utah Jazz that shouldn't have happened. But, it's pretty crazy. Not only did Denver lose, they dropped that game by 16 points. They got outscored 34-19 in the fourth quarter, 33-23 in the third. It's crazy stuff, man. Sometimes there is parity in basketball. But anyway, you've got Charlotte here. They're 7-point dogs at home. I kind of like the Denver side of that. I just have no faith from a sports betting standpoint, no faith in the Hornets to hold on long enough. And I can't imagine Denver blows another lead, but we'll kick it off with the Hornets. I'm not reading into 1 or 2 bad games from Denver. They're still a very good team. Do you have any interest in Charlotte here? Malik Monk is out, but aside from him, are there any – I guess Devontae Graham is also questionable to play with that ankle. I guess we can play it from both sides, whether he's in or whether he's out. And Bismack Biyombo's doubtful to play. We saw Cody Zeller get the surprise start. Only played 19 minutes last game, though. Did finish with north of a fantasy point per minute, but 19, 20 minutes probably isn't going to cut it now that his price came up.
Yeah, I think that if Graham is in, it's not really that appealing of a team. Even if he's out, it's still not that appealing, but you obviously would just get more production from guys like Rozier and Bridges. But if we assume Graham's in, you see the usage and the assists percentages drop for Rozier and for Bridges. If we assume Zeller gets the start, at 4,300 on DraftKings, it's still okay, I guess, if you think he can get the 24 minutes like you did 2 starts ago. But if you're only going to get around 20 minutes, that's not going to get it done. I do think that maybe Charlotte plays a little bit bigger in this game because of going up against Jokic and Plumlee. So, maybe you get 24, 26 minutes from whoever starts, and then, 18 minutes from Hernan Gomez.
If Graham's out, do we go back to Rozier and hope that, he can pull through with a solid outing?
I think so. I mean, a lot on the 4-game slate would come down to ownership, because even just looking like to the other side of this game, you have Jamal Murray, who's only $600 more than Rozier. That's a spot that I would want to be paying attention to ownership. If everyone is going to go to Rozier, because I think he would project well if Graham's out, because the rates are really good. But you're still talking about a quality team in Denver. You're talking about a very suspect player in Rozier as far as consistency goes. So with it being a 4-game slate, ownership I think gets or should be weighted a little bit more, just because obviously it gets more concentrated. So a lot would come down to that, but I think he would project well.
Wow, Doncic keeps grabbing his thumb in this Pelicans Mavericks game.
I saw him doing it earlier. I don't have it on now. I have a lot of him on the night, well, on both slates, but on the night slate, and hoping he stays in the game.
Yeah, he walked up to the free throw line and put his thumb like in between his legs, like trying to put some type of pressure on it. That's crazy. Let's hope that that's all right, because people were concerned about that. You and I discussed it. I don't know what to make of it, but how's he doing right now?
He has 18 points, 7 rebounds, and 7 assists in the third quarter.
All right, so it's not terrible.
He also has 7 turnovers.
That's not great. How about the Denver side? Charlotte's a very slow team, slowest paced team in the league. Defensively, they're not good, but this game, I would imagine, is going to be played at an absolutely crawling pace. I don't think we have a total yet, but if you had to set a total on this game right now, what would it be? Probably like 205.
I was going to say like 206, 208.
Right? I mean, I don't know how it can be much higher than that. I really don't. Both of these teams play very slow. Does the matchup alone, though, incentivize you to look towards Denver?
Yeah, I mean, it's a spot where Jokic and Plumlee both should just absolutely eat for whatever time they're on the floor. Jokic's minutes typically are down, in that 32 to 33 minute range now that Plumlee's back, and Plumlee gets the rest of the center minutes. But I think that the price on both of them is perfectly fine. You have Jokic at 9,500 and Plumlee at 4,100. I think that it's just a front court that doesn't really have an answer for them. So they both look pretty good.
Okay. Is that it for Denver?
Yeah, that, and I mentioned the Jamal Murray pivot to Rozier potentially.
Let's talk Houston and the LA Clippers. Now, this game should be incredibly high scoring. I would be shocked if we saw this one not, open above 235, you would think. I mean, it has to be. Right now it's at 237. Okay, so yeah, right around where I was expecting, 237. The Rockets are, at least on DraftKings, they're a half-point favorite, Adam. Should be a really fun game to not only watch, but from a fantasy standpoint, I would assume there's going to be a lot of value, especially on a 4-game slate. You're looking at Harden and Westbrook. Harden's beginning to gain some separation on DraftKings in terms of price, which is still, I don't know, strange to me. Westbrook's been just as productive as him probably since the start of January. How do you differentiate here?
I think that they're definitely two players that I pay a lot of attention to the ownership, because the way they've been playing for a long time now, and the fact the change in personnel benefiting Westbrook as well, I think that they project pretty similarly. And so I think people have been kind of slow to adjust to that. Obviously, in the last game, Westbrook struggled, but you've still seen when they're priced close together, Harden's usually getting like double the ownership of Westbrook, and I don't really think that should be the case now, getting a little bit more distance between them. But I still think only $700 probably still you'll see more people go to Harden, whereas I think he projects slightly higher still, but it's for all intents and purposes like the same play in my opinion. You're getting similar minutes, similar production, more drives for Westbrook, more efficient scoring for Westbrook. So as long as people are going to prefer Harden based on the stats that Harden was putting up earlier in the year, I think that Westbrook, especially in tournaments, becomes really, really appealing.
Me too. I don't know what ownership will look like. We'll get that in the morning. But Westbrook at $10,000 in this spot, man, that is just really appealing. The Clippers have guys that can defend, Paul George, Patrick Beverly, you name it. They're going to stick them on both of them and make life tough. But I think with such a high total and a high and a closely contested game, I like both of them. But like you said, ownership is going to play a huge role here. What about the rest of the players on Houston? Robert Covington's price seems to be consistently creeping upwards. He is playing good basketball. He is playing a lot of minutes. And then outside of him, you're talking about the usual suspects, right? The PJ Tucker. Normally, I wouldn't really care to even ask you about Tucker, but he has played. He is going to play big minutes every night, and he's down to $3,700 on DraftKings. It's a 4-game slate, so value might be hard to come by. Can we find any with Houston?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. So as far as Covington goes, even though the price tag's rising, I still have some interest there just because the rebounding numbers look so good since coming over to Houston, which makes sense based on how small they are. And he's not a high usage guy, but you're going to get open looks when you're playing alongside Westbrook and Harden. So I think it's just kind of the perfect landing spot for Covington. And you've seen him be pretty productive since coming over. As far as the other guys go, normally pretty easy to ignore on bigger slates. But like you said, only a 4-game slate. Daniel House at 4K, Eric Gordon 3,800, and PJ Tucker at 3,700. You're expecting low to mid 20s, from Gordon and House normally, and then low to mid 30s from Tucker. They're obviously not productive on a consistent basis whenever they're playing with Harden and Westbrook, but just the likely lack of value on the slate in a game with such a high total, I like mixing and matching those guys.
Okay. So the Clippers have been a team that both you and I have been pretty indifferent towards, not because they aren't very good, but just because they have so many different bodies and plenty of mouths to feed, from Kawhi to George to Lou Williams to Montrezl Harrell. It's a good, deep team. They added Marcus Morris at the trade deadline. He's playing, 30 minutes in competitive games for the most part. He has really struggled to score, but he's still another body out there. And he's better than whoever was it. Like, I forget who else they had. Was Harkless? I don't even remember.
Yeah, they had Harkless.
Doesn't matter. What are you doing with the Clippers against the Houston team that is not rebounding well, obviously, cannot protect the paint, but is going to jack up 40+ threes a night?
Yeah, so it's tough because obviously production's spread out. You have a lot of really good players on this team, but salaries have come down a little bit. Kawhi's only 9,300, Paul George at 7,400, and George played 27 minutes in a not particularly competitive game against Oklahoma City last time out, but before that he was at 30. So I think you probably get 30 to 32 minutes there. You probably get at least 34. 33 or 34 from Kawhi, assuming it's competitive. But I think one thing that's interesting to think about here is, and obviously it's a guess because Houston's so different than other teams. I would think there's a good chance that you actually don't get 48 minutes from Zubac and Harrell here. Maybe you get more of like Beverly, Williams, Morris, George, Kawhi, something like that. And potentially, you pick up a few extra minutes for Lou Williams or a few extra minutes for Marcus Morris, maybe even a few extra minutes for JaMychal Green, which is something that, again, on bigger slates would be completely irrelevant, but could matter on a 4-gamer. I think that this is a game where the uncertainty in how the rotations are going to go, and the fact that it should be a really competitive game. In tournaments, you could project maybe some different rotations for the Clippers than we normally see, and potentially put yourself in a good situation.
Okay, so what would that good situation look like, ideally?
So I think that the way to do it would be to assume that the Clippers play smaller and that you do get more minutes for like a Marcus Morris or a $3,300 JaMychal Green. Obviously, the problem that you run into is you have to be right about the minutes, but then you also have to get these 14, 15% usage guys to have a good game, which is another issue in and of itself. But with it being a 4-game slate and assuming that most people are not going to project it that way, it at least gives you a path to winning tournaments.
All right, so favorite plays, it's very early, but favorite plays from this game right now would be?
10K Westbrook, 10-7 Harden's good too, obviously. And then I like a $7,400 George in what should be a really competitive game.
Okay. Once that shooting comes back, he's going to be a steal. It's just a matter of when, not
Right.
if it will. and it hasn't yet, but hopefully it will. Actually, the last couple of games have been considerably better. I'd like to see it be a little bit more consistent, but definitely the last couple of games he's looked way better. So hopefully he can keep that going. A few of those were blowouts, so his minutes were limited. It is one thing though, like if this game comes down to the wire, does George play 28, 30 minutes or 32, 33 minutes?
Right. That's why I think he's appealing, is that 2 games ago, we saw him get back to 30 minutes. Prior to that, they'd been saying he was limited. Last game against Oklahoma City, he played 27 minutes, but it just wasn't really a competitive game. It wouldn't be surprising at all if in a game between Houston and the Clippers, you just suddenly get, you know, closer to like playoff type minutes out of the Clippers main guys.
That's what I would be pushing towards as well. I would probably be projecting George for 32 minutes here. All right, let's talk. We got 2 to go. Sacramento and Philly. The Sixers without Embiid, without Ben Simmons, likely without Josh Richardson. They're 5-point dogs on the road. They've just dropped 2 straight again on the road to the Clippers and Lakers. I mean, the road record is so heinous and atrocious that no matter who they have at this point, you can't even expect them to win. It's insane. They're 9-23 on the road, 28-2 at home. You can't make this stuff up, dude. You cannot make this up. We'll kick it off though with the Kings. They allowed Washington to erase a 27-point deficit in 9 minutes in the third quarter, but still pulled that one off, pulled away with it in the fourth. Do you see this on a 4-game slate as a Kings team that you really like, or is it not really standing out amongst the other 7 teams?
For the most part, I don't think it's really standing out. Their rotation's pretty tough to predict. Like we saw Alex Len and Harry Giles splitting 48 minutes. And then last game against Washington, obviously a smaller team, but Len only played 14 minutes. Giles played 26. So both of those guys are risky options where they have high ceilings, but you don't know exactly how the minutes are going to look. The backcourt's the most appealing part for me. Buddy Hield has averaged about 1.2 DraftKings points per minute since going to the bench in favor of Bogdanovic. He's typically playing around 26 minutes, and he's not really that expensive. And since he comes off the bench, he's normally pretty low owned. So that's a guy I'll probably get to a lot of in tournaments. De'Aaron Fox is reasonably priced, but his salary's come up a little bit to where I think it might be kind of tough to get to him.
Harry Giles, decent enough fantasy producer. He averages 6.5 fouls per 36 for his career, which is, obviously concerning. But hell, without Joel Embiid, I know that Brett Brown's trying to get Horford the ball more in the block, but I don't see that really making a big enough difference. He tried to get him more opportunities. Last game, Adam, he shot 2 for 8. So, I mean, take it for what it's worth. As of now, do you think you'd have any priorities for the Kings?
If Hield's low owned, he'd be someone I'd probably get to a lot of.
Okay. And Fox is probable to play here. He's got that Q tag, but we expect him to be in the mix. So $8,000 for him. It's not terrible, but I don't think it's a necessity either. What's the total in this game? Let's see. So the total is 222.5. We don't have one for the Nuggets yet. And Charlotte, and we don't have anything for Toronto yet, and we'll get to that in a moment. But everyone probably knows why. A ton of pending injuries. What about Philly, man? What a strange team right now. If you look at the rotation from last game, it's a difficult one to try and break down because Shake Milton started and ended up playing 29 minutes. Hardly played at all in the third quarter. He came back down to earth for sure. He was also in foul trouble, so that makes sense. He probably would have played like 35. Tobias Harris, 33. Horford played 33. Matisse Thybulle started, played 18. For defensive purposes, I would imagine. Mike Scott started, though. Here's the big one, Adam. Mike Scott started and played 36 minutes. Glenn Robinson had a decent night scoring. I think he had like 27 points or something ridiculous, which contributes a lot to those additional minutes off the bench. But he played almost 32 minutes in that game. And Alec Burks didn't even come in until the second quarter. He played 22.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy how Burks, I guess, is not going to matter on this team whatsoever.
It's very weird.
Yeah, I mean, Milton, the minutes are still there. You mentioned the foul trouble. I would still expect him to play mid-30s in minutes. Mike Scott's minutes are interesting because if you had looked at the second half minutes 2 games ago when I think what Richardson got hurt, Scott would have, like, if you extrapolated it to the whole game, he would have played mid-30s. And it was kind of just like, are they really going to play Mike Scott this many minutes? But I guess they are. So not productive, but he is cheap and potentially playing, low to mid 30s again. Uh, Not a bad matchup, obviously, against the Kings. I think that Harris is appealing because he should get tons of usage. Al Horford's salary came back down to 7K, and he should get around 34 minutes. He's a lot more productive, of course, without Embiid. So I think Harris and Horford look pretty solid. Burke's price somehow came up. Um, I don't trust Glenn Robinson's minutes. 4K is a little more than I would want to pay for him. So I think it's pretty much Harris and Horford for me.
Okay. Yeah, I'm with you here. If you're getting like really good value on Shake Milton, sure, but you're not.
Right.
I mean, it's too expensive. The foul trouble contributes. He probably would have played a lot more minutes than that. So take that into consideration. But like you pointed out, Alec Burks' minutes are just very strange. He was of everyone that played last game, right? I think Brett Brown ran 10 men. Burks was the last guy off the bench. So I don't know. But an interesting part is he closed the game out. And I don't know what to make of it. He was in the closing lineup with Mike Scott and Shake Milton and Harris and Al Horford. So I don't know.
That's twice we've seen that now too.
Yeah, it's strange. I mean, I get that you don't want Thibault out there, and Korkmaz once again wasn't shooting well, so I guess it makes sense. But just such a strange team, and at this point, especially with the way they've played on the road, it's really hard to trust anyone, given that both of their top players are out. All right, you want to close this one out? We got one to go.
Yep.
In some spots, I'm seeing Toronto as 10.5-point favorites, but I'm not sure you can trust that yet. Golden State at home hosting the Raptors. You want to take the 10.5 fine. 226 total is what I'm seeing, but I'm assuming that could change pretty dramatically. And the reason for that is that Marc Gasol, Fred VanVleet, Serge Ibaka are all questionable. On the other side for Golden State, Draymond Green is questionable. So that's a lot to take in. I guess right now we have to assume they're all going to play. Well, maybe assume that Gasol's out and Ibaka and VanVleet play, but I really don't know.
Steph is also back.
Oh, that's right. Steph has been fully cleared to play. Yep. So that makes things even more interesting. Well, let's start with Golden State. Steph Curry returning. He's been out for a while. Steve Kerr, when asked about him, when people said, "What, aren't you worried that he'll get injured?" This is basketball. You don't sit guys out in fear that they'll get injured when you have them playing in front of fans that paid to watch the game. And I thought that was kind of enlightening, right? Essentially saying, hey, listen, if he's healthy, we're not going to sit him out. We have people that pay good money for this. And if that's the case, I don't think he's going to return and play 30 minutes, but there is reason to believe that Curry will get back to his normal minutes once he settles in. And it is a hand injury, not a lower body.
Yeah, and I'm expecting, mid-20s here, like 25, 26
Yeah,
minutes.
25. Yep, exactly.
But he's only 8K on DraftKings, and last season he played 232 minutes without any of Cousins, Durant, or Thompson on the floor. He averaged 1.86 DraftKings points per minute with a 47% usage rate. I don't know if he's going to come out chucking shots in his first game of the season or if he's going to just kind of, just be out there kind of getting his feet wet. But the opportunities will certainly be there. It's a 4-game slate. So I think a really wide range of outcomes for him just based on the opportunities that he can have.
Could he be someone you actually look at?
Yeah. I mean, because again, like I have no idea what the usage is going to be in this particular game since he hasn't played all year. But if you were to assume that he plays like he would if he'd been healthy and the way he played last year, if you're talking around 1.8 points per minute for 26 minutes, it's still really solid at 8K.
Yeah, he's 8K on FanDuel as well. So, man, watch he comes out and plays 30 minutes. Wouldn't that be a shock? Not a great matchup, but it could get better with some of those injuries. What does Curry do for the rest of this team? Let's assume Draymond Green plays.
I think that it obviously takes usage away from the other guys. You've seen a lot of Golden State players that aren't very good getting more usage this year, whether that's Damian Lee, Eric Pascal, Jordan Poole, Michael Mulder. Like, these guys have had to soak up some usage, and you would expect a lot of that to go to Curry. I think that he could benefit Andrew Wiggins, though. We saw Wiggins.
I think he will actually. Not
Yeah,
that he could. I think he will.
yeah, I agree. So maybe the usage for Wiggins hasn't been as high as we expected since he came to Golden State. It was actually lower than it was with Minnesota so far. But I think that he should be more efficient. We saw that in Minnesota when he played alongside Towns, and I would expect that here with Curry out there too. Wiggins just not an efficient scorer when he's the number one guy, but having Curry out there for Toronto to focus on, I think should make Wiggins a better player going forward.
I would agree with that. I think that's exactly what we'll see. In those 13 or 15 games he played without Towns, he was dreadful, man. I had mentioned many times his effective field goal rate went down 10% with Towns off the floor. That's really bad. So we'll see. We'll see what the minute limit looks like on Curry too. That could play a role. But outside of that, it's tough to trust any of these like peripheral guys. It's really going to be tough to understand what their minutes are going to look like. I don't know. I don't think any of us will until we actually see it play out. All right, let's finish it with Toronto. What do you have for the Raptors, and who are you assuming is in and out?
Yeah, I mean, obviously a ton of moving parts here. Last game you had Van Vliet, you had all of them, miss the game once again, in which case you get huge minutes for Powell, big minutes for Siakam. You finally got Chris Boucher being treated like an NBA player. Started the third quarter, played a total of 29 minutes, needed him to win tournaments. So it's messy. I mean, there's no guarantee the rotation looks the same even if those guys are out. I would assume that Boucher gets healthy run because he played so well, and it's a Golden State team where he can definitely be out there. But it's still just, I think, a lot of moving parts. So the guys that I would feel really confident in are Powell, Siakam. That's assuming Van Vliet's out. In Powell's case, Siakam should be good regardless. If Ibaka and Gasol are both out, then I think Boucher probably gets good run. That's kind of just a guess, though.
Yeah, it's a bad Warriors offense or defense. It's a worse offense. They rank dead last in the league. But Curry should help fix that at least a little bit. It's not going to fix all of their problems. We know that. We even saw that earlier in the year through the first however many games. It was not their saving grace. He was not their saving grace. But take it for what it's worth. You think they play up in pace with Curry back, or do you think nothing
I
changes?
would think so, yeah.
Yeah, I would think so as well. Over the last or since the start of February, the Golden State Warriors are playing the 10th fastest pace. So maybe that comes up and we see an even faster paced team, which makes this a more appealing matchup for Toronto. We'll finish it with this, Adam. Top options. Actually, I won't ask one from each tier. One from the top and the mid-range. You've got Harden, you've got Westbrook, you've got Jokic up there, Kawhi Leonard, Siakam. And then in the mid-range, you've got Curry down there at 8K, Wiggins, Tobias Harris. You mentioned Paul George. Al Horford's at 7K now. Give me a couple guys up at the top and middle.
Yeah, out of the top, I'll take whoever's lower owned between Westbrook and Harden, which I assume is going to be Westbrook. Mid-tier, I think Paul George is really interesting, especially with being a shorter slate. There's less risk, or there's more reason to take a shot on, hoping that his minutes come in higher than they have been recently. Wiggins, if he's really low owned, just hoping that he gets a bump from Steph. Down at the bottom, it's pretty ugly. I do like Buddy Hield in tournaments in the mid-range, like I said before. Down towards the bottom, it's pretty gross. Maybe Alex Len, hoping that his minutes trend back up. Maybe Hernan Gomez, hoping he gets a few extra minutes against the big Denver front court.
Yeah, and God, is PJ Tucker going to have viability at 37?
Yes, I mean, just based on minutes, but it's the thing with PJ Tucker is that whenever he's viable, it's because it's like a short slate and he's cheap. So the ownership ends up being really high.
Yeah, absolutely.
Still terrible.
And and if Devontae Graham's out, maybe that'll open something up, especially given that Malik Monk is suspended. We saw Charlotte with some decent numbers on their secondary options a little while ago, but it's tough down there at the bottom. We'll pay attention to that. The Toronto injuries, the Charlotte injuries, all of those will play a big role for sure. So that'll do it for us. Thanks for hanging out. And remember, if you haven't reviewed the podcast yet, leave us either your username at Awesemo or your DFS username. Leave a review, and you will be entered to win a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum membership a full month of that completely free. By leaving a review, you'll get yourself entered. Positive, 5-star reviews are greatly appreciated, but that's up to your discretion. All right. For Adam Scherer, myself, Dave Loughran, thanks for hanging out with us. We'll see you back here tomorrow on the Early Bird.